Peace, peace, peace. I am Philip Roundtree. You're tuned into episode 39 of hashtag You Good Man. So in this episode, we're going to be having a conversation about autism, right? In the next few weeks, I am going to be participating in an event with the Community Autism Network that's headed by my homie who's on now, Mr. Keyon Mallory. And so, prior to the event, I just thought it would be a pertinent topic to be discussed on the podcast. So, I asked them to come on so we can have a conversation about it, because there's so much misinformation that goes on with regards to the topic of autism. And despite me being in the mental health field, despite me having had clients previously who've been diagnosed and live with autism, I still have questions. There's still information that I don't have. And that, again, that's coming from somebody within the field. So, I decided to have him on. I feel like Sway, right? When Sway do interviews with people, like Sway give the best introductions ever, man. It make you feel it like, dang, like Sway known this boy for like the last 30 years. But in reality, he might know of him, but he get the bio or what have you, and then read off and just make it his own. And so with that, the reason why I bring Sway up is because this is the introduction. I didn't have to ask him for a bio. Right, that's been one of my good friends, for the last 21 years, probably, since we was probably about 14. Going to high school together. We went to high school together. We went to college together. We've lived in the same dorms. Boys get to see, he got to see how, one side of the room, was always junky. That was usually my side. It's just somebody that I've been able to have, real conversation with, real healthy conversation with, somebody who, his family treated me like family. His mama Kim, with the super salty jerk chicken that we all love. Again, we just been through so much together, and this one of the brothers who I've just, I appreciate having you in my life as a part of my tribe, somebody, again, that holds me accountable, even if I'm watching from afar, seeing the work that you're doing with regards to autism, or whether as a father of two young girls, as a husband, just sit and watch it from afar. We get to learn, right? I get to learn. And so, with no further ado, I just want to introduce my good friend, my brother, Mr. Keyon Mallory.
Appreciate you for having me. I always watch your videos and be like, man, you gotta have me on here one of these times. But so I finally get a chance to get on here. But no, thanks for the intro. Obviously, like you said, we've been knowing each other forever. In all types of environments, all types of situations going through over the years. So it's really cool to see like what you're doing. Obviously, like you said, doing a lot of different things, but what you're doing is like inspiring. And even when, back when I was doing other different things, like just to see kind of your growth and all of that, and the programs that you're putting together and the different things, whether it's physical health or mental health, I think is really cool. And that's why I always try to, whenever I can, promote, support, share, whatever I can to make sure, people get to see what you're doing and get the information that you're putting out there.
Well, no, listen, I definitely appreciate it. And that's one of the things with social media. The easiest thing we can do is press the share button. I'm a firm believer in that. Likes are cool, right? That, that's, even if I don't know how cool likes are, honestly, the more I really think about social media. But the share is important, because the share is saying, I see what you're doing. And, whoever I interact with, I want them to see that too, right? So that's always appreciated. And that's why, I try to do the same. And so with that being said, we're just going to hop right into it. So who is Keyon Mallory, if people can see the name, Mr. Can?
Yeah, I guess first and foremost, husband of going on 9 years, almost 10 years now. Got two daughters, that's 7 and 4. Been working in, field just in general, human services, working with individuals of different aspects for over 10 years, and specifically with autism. recently. I guess our 3-year anniversary was June 30th when Keyon was founded. It became a 501c3 nonprofit organization. But the Community Autism Network is a program that pushes inclusion. Generally speaking, really that's our goal, to push inclusion on the spectrum, to kind of break down some of the stigmas that people kind of perceive when it comes to people having autism. And generally speaking, like, being in a community just like anybody else, you know, trying to stay away from a lot of the segregated situations that, here's my daughter now, she just popped in here. You gonna come back?
Yeah.
Can I finish?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, see you later. All right. See, she threw me off now.
No, that's all good.
But yeah, trying to break down stigmas and, more importantly, provide inclusion, like real inclusion, and not we're going to have autism night or sensory friendly night at the Sixers game. And there's nothing wrong with those type of things. I think that's still a step in the right direction. But what we do is provide, we make it inclusive for everybody. So we provide a community event like the event that we had last week. We had an arts and crafts day, and that was for everybody. We want the whole family to come out there. Corey, you take that over there. Can you go play with that with mommy and sissy? Okay, I'm gonna see you when I'm done. Okay.
Listen, man. That's the joys of fatherhood, right? My daughter right upstairs. I had to have a conversation with her, like, yo, listen, I know you playing Roblox on the laptop. I know you like to scream and yell and excitement. We just need you to tone it down some, all right? But again, it's the beauties. I wouldn't trade it, and not to get off topic, but and not having fathers growing up, right? Even when we see moments like this, it's just like, we're breaking that tradition of that unhealthy tradition of not being present. So yeah, whatever she walks in, it's just like, again, man, it's a beautiful thing. Again, knowing your background, knowing life, knowing mine, when these things like this occur, it's a beautiful thing, man. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. But yeah, like I was saying, I think that's really our goal, is inclusion, full inclusion. Like I was saying, we had an event last week. We had different people, I guess you could say, sections where we kind of sectioned it off. I had a whole arts and crafts event that was open to everybody. So it was broken up. We had a slime section. We taught people how to make slime. We had a open art session where people could just kind of color and paint and do whatever they want. Painting with a twist section. We made the little sensory water bottles. We did a lot of different things, but the goal in those situations is never to have events that's specific just for people with autism. Like, we want that to be family friendly for everyone, so that people can have that opportunity to interact regardless of, people's perceived differences.
Yeah, no, and that's great that happens, because when we talk about the importance of inclusion, right, and that's how we really start to break down the barriers. We start to break down the stigma of what autism is, or what different races and ethnicities, different religions, right? If we're able to come together and be able to have interactions with one another, that's how we learn. So for me, my first interaction with the autistic adolescent, he was about 16, 17, and went to Lower Merion High School. And so he was, at the time they would consider him Asperger's. And so, going into the high school setting, seeing what those interactions with him and his peers looked like, there was particular classes that they wanted me to go into, because he had, his social skills were, they were lacking in a sense to where, students who were mainstream could truly understand, right? And then for him to understand, certain things like social cues, talk about body language and what have you. And so me working with him to help him understand that. And we worked together for approximately a year, and I just saw the progress taking place throughout that time with the things that we were working on. So a lot of it was community exposure. right? So it was him going to, like, I would take him to the gym with me, just let him work out, interact with people, be able to say excuse me if he had to get or ask a question. He had to be prepped to be comfortable in asking a question. How many sets do you have left, right? When we're talking about a machine. And so it got to a point where him not going to the gym, not being in that environment, to where he was asking, listen, can we go to the gym? Because he enjoyed being around the people. And so it was various community exposures. He ended up getting involved in karate, right? It wasn't about his skill level, but it was just more about him being comfortable being in that environment. He ended up getting a job where he was able to, you know, build that self-confidence, that self-esteem. I think even at the end, I think he started to try and he started to court somebody. And for just in general, that's a difficult process to navigate, you know, in our teenage years. So, and with him, you know, really trying to work on these skills that we're talking about, you know, it was a lot of progress that was made. And again, that came from interacting with not only his grandmother, who kept him really locked in the house because she was concerned, as a parent is. A parent is concerned about the well-being of their child. They don't want to see hurt or harm come their child's way. But there is an idea that you're not going to be around forever, right? And you want them to be able to have the skills necessary to thrive without you. And so a lot of the real work came in working with her, right? And working with her, because he was just open to whatever. He just needed the framework and the guidance to help him improve in that area. So, you know, when you talk about mainstream and having all-inclusive events, that's so necessary when we're talking about, you know, when we talk about skill set building.
Yeah, normal risks. I mean, at the end of the day, like, how do we learn? You know, especially in high school, college, like, we learn from trial and error. And a lot of that is, you know, situations that a lot of individuals with autism don't get a chance to do because people are, you know, parents, caregivers, so forth, are overprotective. And I get it. Just like, you know, I'm just like you said, you know, being a parent, you're going to be protect your kids. I think what happens is over time, you know, your kids get to a point where they start to rebel and pull away. The kids on the spectrum don't see that and don't know that's something that they can do. And typically when you talk about typical kids, you know, they start to do that and parents start to, you know, let that leash go a little bit more to the point where you start to see more independence. Kids on the spectrum, if they don't have those outlets, they don't have friends, they can't see other people doing those things. So then they kind of just stick in the house and they stick around, they family member and caregiver, because of those reasons. And slowly but surely that becomes their norm and that becomes their comfort zone, and they don't get the opportunity to be to explore and try different things and fail and, you know, get back up and try it again. And I think that's part of, you know, our goal is to try to push for that. And when I'm talking to, you know, families, that's a lot of what I'm communicating to them, is to give them a chance. I mean, obviously, depending on where their skill level is with communication or socialization, you know, you want to try to set them up for success in the beginning so that they want to continue to keep doing it. But after a while, you kind of got to take the training wheels off and let them try it. Let them try it in a safe way, obviously. We're not setting people up for failure, but let them try it in a safe way. And once they do that, then you start to open up, similar to the young man that you were just talking about. I'm sure after a while, when he started to get out there and he started to interact with people, you know, that opened up different ideas of what he can and can't do. And I think that's just our, you know, I mean, generally speaking, that's our goal and that's what we're trying to do. And help parents. It kind of starts with them. Obviously, it starts with supporting them, with understanding, you know, why they need to do these things and why it's important for them, because all these years they've been taught a lot of different things. They've been told from this specialist and that specialist, they need routine. They can't, you know, they struggle with this, they struggle with that. And a lot of people not speaking about where their strengths are and building off of that. So that's kind of where we kind of take a little different approach and try to help push that way.
Yeah, no, I think that's an important part to really hone in on. This, you know, this idea of a strengths-based perspective encompasses all, right? And it's this idea that, we do have certain strengths, and if we can really focus in on that, no matter what you've been diagnosed as, again, no matter what your identity is, we all have a strength and we all have something to offer this world. And for all of us, again, it has to be nurtured, right? It has to be nurtured ideally from a younger age. So then when we get to the point of adulthood, that, we're comfortable in truly trying to understand our purpose. And that's no different. That's no different with a child who's been diagnosed with being autistic. They still have a purpose. They still have the right to live a healthy, fruitful, and productive life. Whatever that might look like for them. They have the right to be able to enjoy life to the best of their capabilities, right? So that's so critical. I do want to get into the idea of just some statistics regarding autism. Now, I was reading that boys, and this being a men's wellness podcast, that boys are 4 times more likely to be diagnosed with autism than girls. Yeah. Have you found that in your research and just in your work in general?
No, definitely. I was actually because now outside of, and I didn't say this earlier, but co-founder of Keyon. Also, I oversee services for adults with autism in Chester County for adult community program. We have about 50 participants in that program, and I would say maybe 40 of them are males.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's a huge gap. I try to stick to my strengths when it comes to understanding like certain pieces of that. So I haven't like gone too in depth about why that is, but it's a big difference when males and females. I think it's that gap is there, and I'm not really 100% sure why that is, honestly.
Okay. And so, what I was reading, what I was able to pull up was that, and again, I'm not, I don't want to make it like I'm some scientific guy, but one of the reasons was that it's harder to see in girls, right? With boys earlier on in life, it's easy to see. And again, I don't know, relatively how truthful these statements are, but they're saying that it's harder to see in girls and easier in boys. And I wonder what factors go into that. Yeah. And then it also talks about that it could be potentially being overlooked, right? It could be being overlooked in girls. It might be being identified as something completely different. I'm trying to think of diagnoses that I'm familiar with that may be, that might parallel with regards to symptoms. Right. I do remember working a case where, when I was in the hospital, a young lady, she was initially diagnosed earlier on as borderline personality disorder. And then later on, she was diagnosed as being autistic. So, I'm sure she's probably not the only one, right? And I'm sure just regardless of gender that this happens. So, yeah, I mean, again, maybe it's sort of like understanding why sickle cell is so prevalent in African Americans as opposed to any other ethnicity, and that could very well be the case. So what has your experience been with the men who are autistic?
Yeah, it's interesting. You come across different situations. Obviously, people have different spectrum disorders, so everyone has different strengths and different areas in which they need to work on so they can be as independent as possible. But you kind of see some individuals who come in, and you could tell over the years, due to whatever reason, whether it was a lack of supports or services or their family's inability to be educated on the topic, and knowing where to go to get the support that they need, or someone has really strong advocates. So they come in with different skill sets, just like, I guess you could say, just like anybody else. But you see some of the same limitations. So I've worked with adults, I've worked with kids. And you kind of can see some of the same similarities when you talk about developmentally. Autism is a developmental disorder, so a lot of guys that's in, I may work with that's in their 20s, developmentally, they may be in their mid to late teens, and they're coming up on a lot of different things that, we would have went through when we were in high school, the puberty stages, and coming in touch with their sexuality, and trying to figure out what they like, what they don't like. So when you're working with those individuals where, it's a lot of work from that perspective, then you have some individuals, they were diagnosed late in their 30s and 40s. So they're coming with a totally different perspective on, their life before they had a diagnosis and after. So obviously in them situations, you kind of attacking it a little bit differently and trying to support them a little differently. I have a guy, when his whole life, he just felt like he was different. He went through high school. His dad was a barber. Then he got his license to become a barber. But he didn't want to cut hair. He just did it because his dad was open to it and wanted him to do it. After a while, he's working kind of odd jobs, going to community college and trying to figure out. But he never had real friendships, no real friendships. He had people he had a claim of acquaintances and stuff like that, but no real friendships. And then I think around his early 20s, he got the diagnosis, and it kind of opened up his eyes a little bit more once he did some research as to what autism was, and why he struggled with meeting people and actually interacting with people and making friends and being like his brother and sister who had families and all of that. So we kind of started there, and then he had just like us, family situations came up. His father passed away and left him a barbershop. So now you're talking about a grown man who is lacking some pretty significant communication and social skills, and has a lot of anxiety as well. And he's thrown this big business, and he's in there cutting hair and trying to run the shop. It's a lot. It's a lot for him. So trying to support him and meet him where he is, and slowly but surely kind of build up his success with meeting new people, understanding some of the different social norms that go on in, society today, understanding, how to communicate in a barbershop, which we know is a totally different language. And that's different for him. So it's a lot. It's really interesting. I enjoy it. You see, unfortunately, you see some people who they could be a lot further if they would have got support earlier, but at that point, it is what it is. So you're trying to meet them where they at and try to help build as much as you can.
Okay. So, and there's two questions that come from that. So I'm gonna go with the first one. So I know you said you work with, about 40 out of the 50 are men. What percentage of that would you say are, people of color?
Probably less than 5, I would say.
Wow.
It's a real small percentage of African Americans, and I've seen that. That's not even just what I'm doing now, working with adults, but even working in schools with kids. And that's definitely a question that kind of comes up from time to time. You kind of wonder why. And I'm pretty sure I have some ideas as to why when you think about.
So what's some of the ideas?
Some of the family structures, and just obviously growing up in the African American household, and you think about the stigma related to getting a diagnosis like that and being different. I talk to, now that I'm doing this type of work or been doing this type of work, I get more and more questions from family members like, hey, do you think, the teacher was saying this, but I just ignored it because, I don't want them to be labeled and I don't want this, but do you think maybe this, and you get those type of conversations where, and I'm guessing if those same conversations are happening with Caucasian families, I'm pretty sure it goes a lot differently. They're going right in and they're trying to figure it out pretty quickly so that they can get the services and support that they need a lot faster. And that's that's been a big thing. I know for sure, you know, you could be diagnosed as early as 18 months, 18 to 24 months, an individual with autism. I'm pretty sure, and I don't know, I had a statistic in front of me, but most African Americans on average, it's like 2 years after that, like 4 or 5 years old when they're getting the diagnosis, because I think for some of the reasons that I just said, people don't want labels. They're scared of labels, and not, which I understand. But I think it's a little different when it comes to autism. I think when it comes to autism, if you don't have that diagnosis, if you really kind of starting behind the starting line, you're starting a lot further behind, and you're going to struggle to catch up. And that's unfortunate, because those services can start, that early intervention can start as early as 3 years old.
Yeah, and so when, you know, again, in preparation for this, I was looking up just why when it comes to African Americans, and this actually stems from a few years ago, and I think I have reached out to you. I think we might have had a brief discussion on it. You know, I was given a client, and he was about 7 years of age, and he had from my first time meeting him, he had all the telltale symptoms, the one that we most know, like perseverating on a task for, you know, for hours on end. His grandmother, she would buy buttons, and he would just put buttons together literally for multiple hours. He had communication issues. He had social skill deficits. And so, like, from that first moment, I knew he had some type of developmental delay. Now, he was diagnosed with, and this is one of the things that comes up when we're talking about, especially African American families and their interaction with healthcare providers. He was diagnosed with having depression, I believe depression, anxiety, and oppositional defiant disorder. And nothing spoke to the behaviors that I saw from the first moment that I met him. And if anybody, you know, was paying attention, as far as professionals, then they would see that as well. So he had a psychiatrist who was prescribing him medication. He had the agency that I worked for. And the grandmother, she was on top of it. She would do everything that they said, right? But even with that, you know, we're talking about, you know, the mistrust that exists, the misdiagnosis that exists. You know, we're often diagnosed later on in life, as we talked about the stigma, the idea of denial. But I think, and so then with that client, I have made a referral on 3 separate occasions to Children's Hospital. Right? 3 separate occasions. They never contacted her. They would say, and we recognize that it's a few month process, but they never contacted her. And we actually called, and again, somebody will get in contact with you. And so we actually started to look up, you know, advocacy lawyers for the family in order to advocate on their behalf, because, you know, I'm limited in what I can do truly. But, you know, I can see how Black children in particular, and it happen to be Black boys, aren't diagnosed. Right? They're misdiagnosed. They're giving something completely different. They're giving conduct disorder and oppositional defiant disorder instead of depression, instead of anxiety. So go ahead, I'll let you speak to that.
No, I totally agree. I think the barriers it takes, and, you know, the work that it takes to even get the evaluation for autism, some places can be over a year, and that's on average. That's how long it's taken. So you think about the average single Black mom who's run into a situation like this, and they're trying to work within the school and work with the people that they think are the professionals that, you know, can support their son or daughter in that type of situation. And the work that goes into that, and people got to go to work. People got different things that's going on. Think about how I grew up. There's no way my mom would have had enough time to be able to get me to all the specialists and be on these waiting lists, get on these waiting lists, know which waiting list to be on. and to be able to get me the support that I would have needed if I was in that situation. I think it's definitely not enough places out here to be able to do that. I know a lot of, I think CHOP is one of them that's moving towards where they're trying to do more education within the community, because a diagnosis for autism is an evaluation. There's no blood test or anything like that.
Yeah.
A lot of it is looking at the developmental milestones. If you're meeting those, if you take your son or daughter to your pediatrician and they're asking, where is he doing this and he's doing that, that's a part of that testing. And then also looking for those warning signs. And so they're trying to educate a little bit more around that, but that outreach isn't there. And you could talk to any family that's out here. They don't know that. I know that because I'm in this field and I've been to conferences and different things like that to see, like, oh, they're trying to educate people so that they can kind of get a head start on it, but there's no outreach for that. And I think that's definitely where people struggle at. And like I said, if you grew up like me or you in the situations that we did with our moms, I'm pretty sure we're going to be behind as well in that situation.
Yeah. No, I completely agree, and it can be frustrating. Again, when we talk about this, I can only imagine, and the grandmother I'm talking about, her husband actually just died, probably earlier this year. So here she is as a grandmother raising two children. One, his younger sister who has behavioral issues on the physical side, and with him, with these delays. And again, she's still trying to do the best that she can. And so it does become frustrating. And I could understand it if she just gives up, right? If she loses, if you become hopeless in these situations, if you're given okay, we'll follow up with you within 6 to 9 months, especially in the era that we live in now, where, and this isn't to make light of this situation by any means, but people are saying Kawhi Leonard is taking too long at picking his team for where he's going to be for the next 5 years, and it's been 4 days, right? So I can only imagine if we're talking about 6 months, a year that you have to wait to get this appointment. It's just like, forget it, right? It's forget it. But that's why it's important for organizations like yours to exist, because it can help potentially facilitate that process, or just offer that encouragement, offer resources, whether it's skills building and just empowerment services, because again, that's part of it as well. Those empowerment services to help families continue on till they truly get the help that they need from the quote unquote professionals, even when and I don't want to shame the professionals, right? Because they're overwhelmed as well. With what's happening and the lack of resources and what have you, doing the best that they can. So it's just systemic. That's what we talk about, systemic barriers that exist to hinder people from getting the services that they need. So to shift. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was about to say, and then what's the cycle? What does that turn into? You get, depending on, what their skill level is, you get someone that's no different than a typical kid who was passed through but couldn't learn how to read. They get passed through, and the next thing you know, they're out of high school, and then they don't have the skills to be able to be self-sufficient. That same thing happens to the individual with autism, cognitively and from when you talk about everyday activities and daily living skills. And next thing you know, you have 25, 26 years old that don't know how to even use the toilet. And so what type of quality of life are they to have in them type of situations? What's the life expectancy? They end up getting drugged up, put into some type of community group home for somebody making $9 an hour. And how much support are they going to get in that situation? I think, and that you see that same kind of story. And like I said, working with adults, I see all types of, I see both ends of the spectrum when it comes to that, not the autism spectrum, but when it comes to the people who've had support and had different services to the ones who didn't. And, they're almost basically starting from scratch.
Yeah. But that's why we continue to just, again, try to make people aware and continue doing the great community efforts, the grassroots efforts, the stuff that don't get publicized, right? Because that's where the impact truly happens. And so my next question was going to be with regards to some of the myths. And we're not going to spend too much time on it, but I think you hit on one of the myths earlier, and I don't know if it was intentional, but the idea that somebody with autism can't thrive in the business arena, right? Here we have, or have a job that's not your bagging up groceries. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but right. Here you can have somebody that's autistic, because a lot of times when we think of autism, we think about the extreme aspect of autism, right? So somebody like you said, the gentleman having a barbershop, being a barber. Now, he might have some issues in trying to navigate that whole process, but look, here he is. He has something that's his own, and that's a strength, and he has a skill that he's sharing with the world. So what are some other myths?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely one big one that, people with autism either have some type of intellectual disability or they can't, function in society. They can't live on their own. All individuals with autism have some type of, I would say intellectual disability. That's probably one of the biggest ones that I feel like I run into. And I think that also the myth about the spectrum, I think that's a big one that people don't seem to catch. I think people typically think about the spectrum as being something that's linear when it's more circular. There's no that high functioning and low functioning autism, I think, is definitely a big misconception. I think if you look at it from a circular perspective, you can have someone who maybe have really strong communication skills, but sensory wise, they have a lot of sensory regulation issues. You can have someone that has no communication skills, but when you talk about intellectually and you talk about activities of daily living, they're holding down a job, a car, and they're functioning in society no different than anybody else. But when it comes to, but they may be either nonverbal or have limited verbal skills. So I think that's a big misconception when people think about autism, is that you either on one end or you're on the other, when that's not really it. It's more of, you have some deficits in whether it's communication or socialization and kind of fall in between that. You may have some sensory regulations concerns, some coping skill deficits, but it's not one end or the other. I think that's one of the biggest things that I feel like people struggle to understand. They kind of just look at it as, oh, you're either on this end or you're on that end, or maybe you're in the middle. And that's not the case.
So and what I hear is that they're human. It's things that they might be good at, and they might have strengths in this area, but in other areas they might have quote unquote deficits or areas where improvement is needed.
Correct.
If indeed that's possible, right? And so that's no different than us.
Exactly. Right? Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So just a few more questions, one related to autism. So self-care, how important is that with somebody who lives with autism?
I think it kind of comes back to the point you just made. Is no different than you or I. I would say in the program I work with adults, maybe 70% have a comorbid diagnosis, with whether it's anxiety, depression. Some have intellectual disabilities in autism, but self-care is big. I think helping people develop coping skills and be able to help them function in society is really important. When you think about, unless we could talk about some of our more high verbal, highly skilled individuals that's on the spectrum, they're going to work every single day. And they may have this shirt, and they may have some sensory issues, and this shirt that they have on, they have a dress code at work, and they're trying to work through that every single day. And we may not even be able to see that and understand that they're dealing with not just, the requirements of that job, but they're dealing with some internal issues that are giving them concerns from a sensory regulation standpoint that they're trying to work through as well. So self-care is really important. We try to support the individuals in trying to identify and what works for them, no different than anybody else. Finding out ways to take breaks, trying to find out ways to step out for a second, stuff that's not going to be stigmatizing to someone else that's going to see you, one of your coworkers or anybody else. Like, shoot, if you need to step out and go to the bathroom, throw some water on your face so you can get yourself better, ready to go back in, go do that. If you need to go take a lunch break, put your headphones on, listen to some music for a little bit and come back in there, do what you got to do. I think whether that's working out, we have some guys that are really into stuff like Muay Thai and different physical combat type of things. That's self-care for them. It really just depends, and it's really no different from any typical individual. They're just trying to figure out different things that's going to help them stay focused, and have the same opportunities as you and I.
No, it makes sense. It makes sense. It actually answered my last question. So listen, I appreciate having you on. So now we're going to get into the aspect of this softball game that's coming up.
Oh man.
So let people know about the softball game and how they could join Team Quadify. I actually found some ringers too. I
found some ringers?
Yeah,
Okay.
I did. I found some ringers. Their softball league starts at the end of August. So there was like they could potentially use this as a warm up. And so it's an organization, a friend of mine, Jamie, who I met with on Tuesday, his organization is looking to really do more community work, right? And when I say community work, as was said to me, that there's, again, that idea of you need to work with people, right? In order to, if you're coming from a particular background and your exposure to Black folk might be minimal, or other people of color might be minimal, or dealing with somebody who might have some developmental disabilities might be minimal, the best way to do it is in arenas where you get to truly interact. And so I haven't finalized it yet, but they may be participating in the softball tournament. But go ahead, I'll let you talk about what's coming up.
Yeah, no, the more the merrier. I think, and that was kind of the purpose behind this. This will be our third year doing a softball fundraiser. We try to do at least 2 fundraisers a year for this nonprofit. Being a nonprofit, we work off of donations, and that's what helps to provide the activities that we do for the community. All of our events are always either free or really low cost for the families that come. And that's for all our families, regardless of you have kids on the spectrum or not. We want to make sure that these events there's not a lot of barriers for you to come to these type of events. And softball or baseball, I guess you could say, being a love of mine, I think, I wanted to kind of join forces with that and try to find a way for us to be able to raise money and have fun, and do something that's healthy for everyone. And so this is our third year. I'm excited that Phil and Quadify, they wanted to put a team together to go against us. The first 2 years, we kind of mixed it up and kind of did it within our own team. But this year is really cool, and I think it's really cool that you had that conversation with the gentleman about their program, because that's what it's all about, giving opportunities for people to put out their mission and their focus so that more people can benefit from the great services that we have. And so July 20th will be our third annual softball game, Team Can versus Team Quadify. You can get, if you want to donate, we have 3 different levels of donations. All-star donors, it's a $40 donation. Within that, you get obviously a shirt for the game. You get a water so you're not dehydrated during the game, because it can get hot out there. You also will have some food, hot dogs, snacks, and then we want to try to promote people through using our program, whether it's social media or our website, to promote what you do, because we want to highlight donors. Like, people don't have to, people work hard. They don't have to donate money to things for other people. And But we want to, if you're going to do that, we want to try to promote you as much as possible. So that comes with the $40 donation, and you get to play in the game, obviously. Then there's a $35 donation that comes with food, the game, your T-shirt as well. And then there's a $30 we call a rookie donation, which we still appreciate. So don't feel bad if we just put rookie on there. We're trying to make it fit within the dynamics of the game with the rookie, all-star, and veteran. But if that's all you got to donate, we really appreciate it regardless. I don't care if you got $5, $1, it's going to go towards a good cause so that we can have these free events for the kids in the community, families in the community. So you can go on Eventbrite, you could do that. You can hit up PayPal. I know Phil has a PayPal. We have a PayPal. And if you got Cash App, same thing.
So what's the Eventbrite? What can they look up on Eventbrite?
Look up Community Autism Network softball game, third annual softball game. If you search in that, you should be able to find us. Obviously Philadelphia, if you need to get really in depth with the search, but it should come right up if you look for Community Autism Network softball game on Eventbrite.
Okay, and that's also in my link tree in my bio. So if you just click the link tree in my bio, there's a direct link to that. Okay. Anything else? How can they get in contact with you?
Definitely on here, social media, Instagram, follow Community Autism Network. Mr. Keyon Philly is my personal one. Facebook, same thing, Community Autism Network. Also, before I go, I want to promote September 14th is our third annual community fair. Phil came out last year and volunteered and helped out. It was a great event. We have a lot of different things, and that's kind of what the majority of what these proceeds are going towards for Keyon is going towards this community fair. We have a lot of different things for the community. We have resources for kids that are on the spectrum, families that's trying to get more information. We have providers out there for that. And then we have a lot of fun stuff. We have different field games. We have moon bounces. We have a mobile petting zoo. We have a video game trailers. We have an indoor piece where we're doing we have sensory room where you can do a lot of sensory integration things inside. So it's an indoor outdoor event at the New Covenant campus on Germantown Avenue, across the street from the trolley breakfast spot. But that's the majority of our events occur on the New Covenant campus. They're one of our partners, and they help us out a lot with providing these type of community events that are free or very low cost.
Okay. All right. Well, listen, man, I appreciate having you on here today. It's July 4th. It's always interesting about Black folk celebrating July 4th. I think it's starting to change a little bit. But no, it's even if you don't celebrate July 4th, it's a beautiful time to just interact with people that you care about. That's how I look at a lot of these holidays that have questionable roots. It's just opportunities to be able to convene with one another and just, share love and spread love. So as always, you can reach me on Instagram and Twitter at Phil_Quantify, on Facebook.com/PhilipMSW. That's Philip with 2 L's. On Monday, I'll be having my How to Find a Therapist webinar. You can click the link in my Instagram bio and it'll take you right there. That's at 7 o'clock on July 8th. Feel free to visit the website, www.quantifyllc.net. Thank you, Keyon. I appreciate you.